Hail, surface dweller. Welcome to my review.
Gotta lubricate before this review. Hello and welcome, fellow hydrated gamers. This will be my review of 3.21 Crucible, the recent Path of Exile leak. And this isn't the first time I'm doing reviews of Path of Exile leaks, so check out the other ones if you want to. And if you might be new and don't know how I make my reviews, I focus on the league itself, not the patch. So if they nerfed skill X or buffed skill Y, that doesn't matter for my review because I want to focus on the league itself, not the patch. So with this in mind, why is this video much shorter, you may ask? Well, I'm not a crafter, and this was a very crafting heavy league, but I'm jumping a little bit ahead here. Let's go into the first section of this video, which is gameplay. What was Crucible even about, and what did you even do in Crucible? So let's break this down. If you started the game fresh and jumped into the first area or instance, you probably found a statue. And if you stand in the circle, you can choose a weapon you want to augment to add a Crucible passive skill tree to. We all thought we had enough skill trees in Path of Exile. And then the the Crucible leak happened. So after choosing the weapon and also hold down the mouse click on the first point on that skill tree that pops up, you charge it up. And the higher that bar goes, the more dangerous the encounter becomes, but also the better the reward. Well, hopefully. We'll get into that. I think even just a few days or maybe a week into the league, we all figured out that not charging up to 90% and higher was kind of pointless. Kind of defeating the purpose of having to hold the button each time, each area, each map. We all know how many maps we run. We run like at least 4 maps. More like 4,000, dude. Jokes aside, this got boring really fast, having to hold down the button each time. I like to compare it to Legion, because it's kind of similar, but I feel like Legion does it much better. You click the crystal thing in Legion and you have to break out the enemies to start the encounter. And then you defeat the enemies to then get the loot. The interesting part about when you focus on Legion, you can make a build that works well with that and break the enemies faster to get to your loot quicker. But in Crucible, you can't hold the mouse button harder to charge faster. You just wait and look at the bar fill up. Gameplay-wise, it's a bit boring, but thankfully your heart rate quickly spikes up again after you charged up and walked out of the circle. The monsters quickly start attacking you, and my goodness, they were difficult. Only with like an endgame build, I was kind of starting to get comfortable with it. But at first, if you charge up anything above like 85, there was a very high likelihood you get one shot. If you defeat the enemies, you gain XP towards the location on the Crucible passive skill tree that you chose earlier. If you do this many times, you can reach deeper and higher tiers on the Crucible passive skill tree that you choose. Thankfully, every notable on the skill tree is revealed after revealing the first and lowest depth or tier. So you can instantly say, no, I will not continue with this weapon and try another one. Notables, like especially early on when you leveled, like started a new character, it felt really good doing the whole Crucible League mechanic because you just gained so much power. But the more you played in endgame and slowly finished your character, the less important they got, especially when trying to get the right notable on the right item. And no, we're not going to talk about Totem Explode. I'm ignoring that one for this league review. Right away, some of you might find this enjoyable, right? Trying to get a few more percentages of power for their build and crafting for a long time. But I'm not a crafter. I do not find that enjoyable at all. Having figured out that crafting is the main part of the league, I quickly hoped that charging up the Crucible in the map more and more will result in bigger and better rewards. Rewards in form of currency, hopefully. So that was not the case. We barely got any loot from the league mechanic, which makes sense because there was a clear focus on upgrading the player through the weapon, not through currency or other means. So they want you to gain power through the Crucible passive skill trees, not through getting like 10 essences and 3 delirium orbs, so the next map you can just start blasting again. I understand that decision, but that still doesn't make the league fun for me, as I'm not a crafter. I enjoy destroying many monsters, or potentially lots of difficult monsters in waves. Ultimatum might come to mind. We'll get it soon. You know, I'm not huffing that copium. No, hell no. Going back to Crucible, there were a few types of like loot or items or things you can receive that are Crucible related. One was the Magmatic Orb, which lets you add XP to an item, similar to the lenses you get in Heist for gems. Then we had the Primeval Remnant, a map item with very dangerous modifiers. Some might reduce your spell suppression by 60%, monsters have 50% chance to block your attacks and spells, monsters have 20% increased action speed, or you just cannot leech anymore, and so on. They were very difficult, and if you thought that was bad, we also got Primordial Remnant. I'm getting flashbacks to like the juiced up tiles back in Calandra League. Primordial Remnant is just an even crazier and more juiced up version of Primeval Remnant. I'm not even gonna read all the modifiers on screen right now because they're just like, I don't know, like look at this list. First off, Primeval Remnants allow you to go to the Forge of the Titans. The area is called Forge of the Titans, but also the thing at the end is called has the same name. It's a bit confusing. Anyhow, the area was always the same, and sadly GGG didn't maybe think that one through, because you can't just run through to get what you want. And what you probably wanted was either the Antique Furnace, allowing you to add a Crucible passive skill tree to a non-corrupted unique item, potentially making it way stronger than its original, or the Forge of the Titans, allowing you to combine Crucible passive skill trees of 2 non-unique items, destroying one item in the process and making the other better. Hopefully. People figured out that it was somewhat deterministic, but still a lot of RNG. It probably won't break your item, but it may have made it worse than what you started off with, which then forces you to start all over again. I'm somewhat okay with this, you know, as long as the process before isn't horrible. Sadly, in the current state of Path of Exile, where you have to spam alteration orbs hundreds or even thousands of times, this process is not fun and not something I will interact with. To wrap this up, I did not enjoy Crucible League from a gameplay perspective because of a very crafting heavy league, and you know, I'm just not a crafter. I wish there would have been a bit more for someone like me focusing on destroying lots of monsters and receiving a reward that I could then sell to crafters. Sadly, this was not the case, and therefore the gameplay aspect of this league fell flat and made me stop playing the league about 1 month in. I know I could have like farmed Primeval Remnants and sold those, but holding down the mouse button and then getting one every 2 or 3 maps, I feel like the gameplay loop wasn't fully there, right? Because you go into a map, you hold down the mouse button, hopefully don't die, because you kind of have to charge up above 90% or even 100%, so you kind of need a build that is super tanky, but also strong enough to quickly get rid of the enemies. Otherwise, it takes way too long and it's just not worth doing compared to doing Legion, for example. You know, just blast Legion all day and you make way more currency. Even though I know Crucible isn't for currency, but the gameplay loop just kind of didn't really work, for me at least. Anyhow, with this, let's move on to visuals. So the visuals on the monsters themselves, they were okay, you know, like simple, plain, blackish textures. You know, it's fine for a temporary league. It also reminds me a little bit of like Metamorph, you know, like the gooey visuals. The ground textures on the other side, I could eat off that floor. It's... I don't know, it's just, the statue and the ground textures, they were just gorgeous, you know? Like, you can see how Path of Exile 2 textures, like, kind of bleed into the league a little bit. Really loving those clean, high-quality textures. beautiful. The area itself has a very thick atmosphere with magma at the bottom of this like bridge structure. Or maybe it's lava. Wait, magma is below the surface? Lava is above the surface. Where are we exactly? Anyhow, lore scholars can answer that one. So there's dust everywhere. I think there are even some heat waves scattered around. And if you have the graphic option depth of field active, it looks even better. Not because it blurs everything out, but because it gives everything slightly more depth, making it look like you're higher up than you actually are. I'm breaking the fourth wall a little bit here, but I wanted to mention one more thing. It's the swirly effect when you spawn the monsters, when you hold down at the forge. I really like this effect. It is just actually cool how you can see change and move and spawn different monsters. I started to ignore it as the league went on, but it's actually a cool effect to look at. This is a little bit of a throwback to the gameplay section, but I think they made it look this cool and unique is because they knew that holding down the mouse button is a bit bland, so they thought, why not just spice it up with this cool swirl effect? Either way, back to the original Daniel. One caveat, the area does look a bit bland sometimes. So with random anvils and wood stacks in some place. You know, I know it's a temporary leak, so let's not be picky about it. The items themselves look clean and are different enough, even if all of them are red, orange, and black. You can distinguish them fairly easily. Well, I'm unsure if you're colorblind, then please let me know down below if you had any issues with that. Now, there isn't much else to talk about here, so I guess let's just move on to music and sound. Crucible is interesting. There are 4 different tracks in Crucible, or that were made for Crucible. I'm not quite sure why 4, because I don't think we hear them. It may have been that the music was made and then they couldn't finish some gameplay aspects. You know, like, oh, they wanted to make a boss fight but couldn't finish it anymore, but the music was already done. Highly recommend listening to it. Michael did an amazing job. I loved listening to it since the past months when I work out or when I'm in a train. It's just great listening to because it's just like it has so much oomph behind it. Speaking of sound, there was the Molten one, which had a very deep, boomy effect on the voice, and it made you stop the first time. You're like, okay, let me just stop moving for a brief second, you know, who is this? I don't think I could listen to that voice, you know, for longer periods of time, because it's like, it's a bit overwhelming, but that might be also on purpose, because we're talking about titans here. Like gigantic human-like creatures that can probably pick you up with their bare hands and crush you. They shouldn't sound comfortable, cute, nice, or even neutral. Good job on the sound design team there. And I hope we can hear more of the Molten one in future leagues. Maybe a league about the Red Blades. Speaking of... So I'm not a lore scholar, but I start to enjoy the story and the lore more as time goes on. This time we got introduced to Titans in Rayclast, a completely new race that we didn't know about before, and they even connected it to the Red Blades, which was a faction of the Warbands. Warbands, for people who don't know, was the 2.0 league back in 2015. So you can imagine how long they knew about Titans. Like, they had Titans somewhere in the document written down and we're like, yeah, we're gonna talk about that at some point. In Crucible, it does feel like they're drip feeding us lore though. Some leagues have a lot and some other leagues barely have any lore. It's a bit all over the place the past year or so. Sentinel had none, Kalandra had a bit, Sanctum had a lot, kind of, and now we got Crucible, which has a few lines and some flavor text. I'm not mad, I just wish there would be more.
Our mountain was once overrun by various human tribes, vying amongst themselves for dominance. Little did the Red Blades know that they encroached upon our territory, and we were largely indifferent to their plights. It wasn't until the mountain erupted that their petty disputes were quelled.
Another interesting little tidbit is that Kalandra saw the Titans develop and fall. But other than that, I didn't really find or hear anything else that was major. This leak didn't push the narrative, the story, or the world a major step forward. Still, it was nice, and I really want to hear or just read more about the lore in future leaks and see them implement something new to the existing world of Rayclast. To conclude my review about 3.21 Crucible, I have to say that gameplay in Crucible was poor, because I'm not a crafter. I understand that they can't make a league that makes everyone happy, and that's fine. Leagues like these that I do not enjoy allow me to focus on other things in the game, or outside of Path of Exile. For example, I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I did not like it. It's fun to play other games, because you then look back to Path of Exile and realize, in quotes, bad leagues are still better than some AAA games. We also have to keep in mind that Path of Exile is free. If you want the number, it's the Molten Dude out of 10. You're welcome. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed Crucible, please comment down below. Tell me why you enjoyed it, why it made you want to play more and more. With 3.22 on the horizon, I might put out another video very soon, so subscribe for that. Alright, I'm going now. My voice is kind of dying, I don't know why. I think I still haven't fully recovered from New Zealand yet, my body's weird. Thank you so much for being here, I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and stay hydrated, don't forget that. I kind of forgot about that. Check out my travel video and why I passed out. Anyhow, yeah, I'm going now. Bye-bye.